months, the Supreme Court noted that children, senior citizens and even foreign tourists have been injured in stray dog incidents. It said the issue goes beyond statistics and has serious humanitarian implications, and the court also observed that in the absence of effective state action, vulnerable groups cannot be left to face such risks, and reiterated that it is the responsibility of authorities to ensure public safety and protection of life. First of all, I'll be going over to Sambhav. Sambhav, if you could break down in terms of this, what exactly, when we talk about the statistics as well as the humanitarian concern that the Supreme Court has highlighted and talked about, if you could shed more light on that.
Well, absolutely. We need to discuss out what the top court has said on November 7th, because that is what is upheld today by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has earlier on November 7th has directed States and National Highway Authority of India to remove stray animals, including dogs, from highways across India. So that's been upheld, and all these petitions challenging this particular judgment of the Supreme Court has been dismissed. So the Supreme Court has so the direction to the states and NHAI to remove stray dogs, including stray animals, including dogs, from highway across India is upheld. And earlier on November 17, the top court has ordered that government to ensure proper fencing around government institutions to prevent entry of stray animals. That is what is to be done. And the directions applicable to the district hospitals, public sport complexes, railway stations and other public institutions, that's been upheld, and has ordered immediate relocation of the stray dogs from such premises to shelters after sterilization. This was challenged in the Supreme Court. Now the petition challenging this particular judgment of the Supreme Court has been dismissed. And what the Supreme Court has said today, now the top court in a way has asked the High Court to High Courts are free to pass appropriate orders to prevent these vexatious proceedings against officials implementing Supreme Court directions, and also High Court's monitoring compliance will ensure consideration of the local conditions and ground realities, and also all the High Courts directed to register suo motu continuing mandamus cases to monitor implementation of the Supreme Court directions on stray animals, and has warned, the Supreme Court has warned today that continued failure by officials may invite proceedings under applicable law and contempt actions to be initiated against those officials deliberately disrespecting the top court order. All the chief secretaries of the states and union territories are directed to file the compliance report. This is what the Supreme Court has said today. So what the top court directed in November 7th judgment, how it is to be implemented at ground zero, is what the Supreme Court made it clear today.
All right, Sambhav, stay on with me. I also have with me Adish Agarwal, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, joining me on the telecast. Adish Agarwal, when we talk about this judgment, the fact that the Supreme Court has highlighted even the inaction by the state governments as well. So in terms of that, what exactly is the step forward when we talk about this judgment?
This is welcome judgment, and Honorable Supreme Court is right in passing such mandate, because there was so much nuisance for the general public. Directions to the government is very welcome step.
And also when we talk about the fact that in terms of the fact that they talked about the humanitarian concern as well, Adish Agarwal, and the fact that the dog bite menace is rising as well, they highlighted in terms of the concerns related to the elderly as well as the younger citizens as well, the kids. What exactly, when we talk about that, there's not just the statistics as well, when we talk about the humanitarian concern the Supreme Court has talked about, what are your views on that?
This is the thing. Supreme Court has to see the larger interest of the society. That's why it will be good for every citizen. And the government has been directed to do all these things, so that the rights of the general citizens are protected. They are not, because when the stray dogs are there, they are being beaten, they are bited, and the citizens have to undergo such pain. So to protect the interests of the citizens, these directions have been passed by the Honorable Supreme Court.
All right. Stay on with me. I also have with me my colleague Sambhav. Sambhav, when we talk about the fact that that Supreme Court has talked about that there is a failure and the inaction from the state governments as well. In terms of that, what exactly now going forward should be the steps that will be taken by the state governments as well as the union governments as well?
Well, absolutely here, the Supreme Court has said that animal birth control framework introduced in 2001 suffered from lack of planning and inadequate infrastructure expansion, and also an important observation that sterilization and vaccination drives were carried out sporadically without institutional depth. So here the Supreme Court flagged the concerns raised by different petitioners during the hearing, and the top court has taken it on record, and the Supreme Court has observed that sterilization and vaccination drives were carried out not in a proper manner, without institutional depth or proper long-term planning. And also the Supreme Court bench has said that continued inaction by states in implementing ABC framework has aggravated the stray dog problem across the country. And the court has noted that alarming rise in the dog bite cases in different areas. I mean, court is aware of it and keeping a tab as to what is going on at ground zero in different states, and said that repeated dog bite incidents at IDI airport grave inadequacy in the stray dog management. Another very important by Supreme Court that harm caused by stray dog attack is not just statistical in nature, but unfathomable. And court said that material on record shows that earlier directions issued on August 22nd and November 7th have not effectively reached the ground level. And later on, how it will be implemented at ground zero, the Supreme Court has laid down certain directions for that as well.
All right, Sambhav, stay on with me. I have more breaking news coming in. The Supreme Court has observed that the situation reflects a serious lapse in public safety and animal control measures. It noted that despite earlier directions, significant shortcomings persist in implementation, and the court stressed that the negligence in duty would be viewed seriously and said it cannot ignore ground realities where repeated incidents continue to be reported. Sambhav, in terms of that, take us through the details. All right, before I go to Sambhav, I also have Adish Agarwal. Adish Agarwal, when we talk about the fact that the Supreme Court has flagged serious lapses as well in terms of public safety and animal control, what exactly, when we talk about the implementation as well as when we talk about the fact that the ground measures that are taken, the ground reality that the Supreme Court is talking about, what exactly in terms of the assessment that needs to be done or the steps that need to be taken, what exactly is the way forward? Am I audible, Adish Agarwal? All right. I feel there's some connection issue, but I also have with me Sambhav. Sambhav, in terms of the serious lapses that have been flagged in terms of public safety as well as animal control, what exactly in terms of this, what assessment needs to be done, if you could shed more light on that?
Well, absolutely. In today's judgment, the Supreme Court has given, in a way, asked the High Court to direct, to register suo motu continuous cases to monitor the implementation of the Supreme Court directions. Now the High Courts are given the task. Now the compliance reports which earlier directly filed in the Supreme Court, now this time these compliance reports by different officials, the chief secretaries of these states, the chief secretaries of the states and union territories are directed to file the compliance report before their jurisdictional high court by August 7, and also the union government will have to file their compliance report, and all these consolidated compliance reports from the High Court is to be placed on record before the Supreme Court in the month of November. And the Supreme Court has said that the matter will remain closed except receiving compliance report. And the directions passed by Supreme Court are very clear. Here the Supreme Court said that the High Court monitoring compliance will ensure consideration of the local conditions and the ground reality. So here the High Court monitoring compliance will ensure the local conditions and the ground reality. This will show exact picture, clarify rather the exact picture as to what exactly is the ground situation. And court has again warned the officials that they may invite contempt proceedings and proceedings under applicable law if they deliberately disregard Supreme Court order. So here these are the directions, but again what the Supreme Court said on November 7th. Supreme Court has said on November 7th that rather directed the States and National Highway Authority of India to remove stray animals, including dogs, from highways across India, and government to ensure proper fencing across government institutions to prevent entry of stray animals, and directions applicable to the hospitals, public sport complexes, railway stations, and other public institutions. So these directions earlier given by the Supreme Court in its November 7 judgment are there, and Supreme Court in a way upheld that, and all these petitions which challenged in a way or rather up or to reconsider it, they dismissed. And here these directions of what the Supreme Court passed on November 7 are there, and the Supreme Court has today ordered that no criminal proceedings to be initiated against any institution or authority entrusted with implementation of its direction to curb the stray dog attack in the country. And also the
all right, Sambhav, stay on with me. I also have with me Yogita Bayana, activist, joining me on the telecast. Yogita, in terms of this judgment, what exactly was, in your perspective, what is the biggest takeaway especially when we talk about the animal birth control, the inaction and the safety lapses that the Supreme Court has talked about? What exactly is your perspective on that?
My perspective is very, very clear that it is the corruption and the failure of the government. It is nothing to do with animals. Why they should suffer and why the animal lovers like us should suffer? Because we are trying to, propagate that we are one, nature is one, and we do what our bit is to feed them, to take care of them medically. And what we see is that government is not doing anything other than creating a ruckus of saying that, okay, there is no birth control. Who is the failure? Who is to be responsible for? If they are not doing it, eating up all the money, it is meant for their birth control. Why poor animals should suffer? And I don't think the Supreme Court is getting it at all. I think they are also, no matter how much time we have spent explaining them, the root cause of it, it's not the animal problem, it's the humans are at problem, and they are creating problems. So it is not human versus animal conflict, it is human versus corruption conflict. I would put it this way. I think this should be looked at like that, and I'm appalled that senior judges also don't get it. I don't know what kind of wisdom they have to carry on the judgment.
All right, Yogita, stay on with me. I have more updates coming in. The Supreme Court has directed that the issue of stray dog management will now be monitored by respective high courts across the country. And it also said all high courts should initiate suo motu proceedings to ensure compliance with its directions. On the issue, the court observed that pan-India monitoring by the Supreme Court would not be effective given the nature and scale of the problem. It added that high courts are better placed to carry out timely and detailed supervision, taking into account the specific conditions and requirements of each region. Yogita, when we talk about the implementation on the ground in terms of the fact that we've seen Supreme Court has highlighted that there have been a lack of, there's been lapses as well as inaction by the state governments as well in terms of implementations of the the judgment that was given by Supreme Court. So what exactly should the steps be taken, especially when we talk about concerning the stray dogs, that it should not harm the stray dogs as well?
It is not about only stray dogs, it's any stray animals, and we are the failures, as I earlier also mentioned, that we have encroached their, spaces, including you call any other animals, because I am talking about the expressway, which is from Delhi to Dehradun, and I've been personally traveling, so many dogs are being killed. So we own everything as humans. We really need to understand their perspective also. And what's biggest failure, what I think is, the not involving the animal lovers community or the people who are experts. Even the high courts would know nothing at all. Supreme Court has passed the buck to the high courts of different states. But do they understand the issues? Can't they involve the organizations like PETA and PFA and the people who understand animals? How difficult it is to involve us as stakeholders. We are not asking for more. Ask us the solution. We have the solutions. Trust me, even if you ask a teenager how to manage this whole thing, they would have the answers if they are into animal love or whatever you can call it as caregiving or, but unfortunately, so-called these educated judges won't have answers. We will have the answers. They don't involve us. They don't involve stakeholders for that matter, the experts, environmentalists. So it is not about animal issues. It is related to ecosystem. It is a complete ecosystem they have to address to. So they think they are experts of everything. They can be experts of giving criminals the punishment, and they cannot be the expert of managing the ecosystem. So they need to hire experts. They need to onboard us. We are not even asking them the money. We have actually given them all the briefs and every input they were needing, and it has been 2-3 years now we are at it. However, it is such a difficult task for them to even involve us. I think it is in every case. When I work with women and children, safety, even then they fail to involve the stakeholders. So I think they need to get away with that superiority complex that they know everything because we are judges of Supreme Courts or so-called high courts. They know nothing of everything. Unfortunately, this is a fact of human life. You can't be expert of all, so they rather involve us. No, why do they think they are the gods of the country or the world?
All right, Yogita Bayana, as well as